This hasn't been here very long.
It was by the side of the railroad just the other day, Morgan City, Louisiana. 2 workmen digging a drain ditch, and this one, Kenny LaDay, saw something.
As I was walking, I was looking down and I saw a bone, you know, just high and dry on the ground.
Were you stunned, ultimately? I mean, were you suddenly...
I was at a loss for words. I didn't know... the first thing come to my mind was the poor soul, you know, he's got a family somewhere. Who is he? And that's the part that's bothered me the most.
It also bothers Mary Manheim.
We want to figure out who this person is. We want to send that person home to his or her family.
So you help to unforget the forgotten.
Absolutely.
Manheim is a forensic anthropologist. This is her lab at Louisiana State University, where she helps law enforcement answer questions such as, who is this? And how did the end come?
I could tell you he's probably, 5'7" or so, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, 5'7" or so.
To the untrained eye, this is just a pile of bones.
This tells me he's quite young.
But to Mary Manheim, who is also known as the Bone Lady, this was a life and is a story and a puzzle that needs to be solved.
I can look at his clavicle. That tells me he's probably under 25, 26, so you're beginning to get an age range there. You're beginning to minimize.
I mean, you've told us an enormous amount in 30 seconds. You know, age and
It's
height.
fascinating, isn't it?
But you're so fast at it. That's what...
This is what I do.
Not only does she like puzzles, she's good at them.
Do you know race?
I do. He's white, a very healthy-looking young man.
These puzzles come up much more often than anyone would think.
Some suggest that there's as many as 200,000 to 300,000 people who are unaccounted for.
That's astounding.
It is astounding.
And a new case can break at any moment because the day we showed up for our interview, Mary suddenly had to leave without notice. She was in her car, racing to those remains that Kenny LaDay found in that drainage ditch.
Washed down into the ditch. Interesting.
The phone call from an hour and a half away, a body had been found and no one knew who it was.
Piece of a hip bone here. Where was that? Vertebra there. So I figure skull. So either side, Maria, you want to work on.
Manheim and her assistants delicately sift through the dirt, tagging each bone they find with a little flag.
There's a little bit of a belt there and some type of clothing there.
And a wristwatch.
And there's a wristwatch, right, that, you know, that really brings home this idea of this is a human person, you know, who had clothing, had a watch.
I kind of want to know how you got into this racket.
When I was a teenager, I wanted to be a comedian. I wasn't that funny. I thought I was funny, but when I started college...
You're funny enough.
When I started college here at LSU, I was going to be an English teacher, but just the semester or two before I graduated, I discovered anthropology by taking a course in it. And I said, anthropology, where have you been all my life?
And so Manheim became not only an anthropologist, but also a kind of crime solver, identifying the remains of the lost and the forgotten.
How does it feel when that moment comes when you now found the name and you now found the story?
It's the most amazing feeling. I still get chill bumps all over me, and we absolutely get giddy in the lab. We're so excited because that's one we can check off. You know, this person is identified. Hallelujah.
Many cold cases have been checked off successfully because of these facial reconstructions made from skulls of the unidentified.
It's a sort of an art and a science mixture.
Eileen Barrow is the lab's imaging expert. She builds these faces.
Tissue depth markers are...
That's these pegs that show you how much skin and muscle is on there?
Right.
Okay.
And then it's just a matter from there of placing the clay up to the depth.
She has made over 100 of these, face after face after face. This one sculpted in 1997 from a body found in Nevada. This was the photo of the man in life. And there are many others.
Okay, now here's one that was identified.
Wow, that's pretty close.
That is not close at all.
No? You think that's a bad match? I actually think it's not bad.
And this picture was publicized. Just in a couple of hours, somebody called up and said, I know who that is. That's my friend, you know.
And it was right.
Mm-hmm. So, you know.
So it worked.
It worked.
But you be the judge on this reconstruction, a man who died in the desert and was missing for a decade until his family saw the recreation and ID'd him as this man.
How well do they match up when you get one to the other?
Sometimes they match fairly well, other times not necessarily, but what we're trying to do is capture something in that face that will spark a memory in the viewer's eyes or in the viewer's mind. Well, that looks like so-and-so. Oh, I haven't seen that person in a while. I know that person.
Mannheim says publicity is critical.
Well, we've just started a new campaign working with Crime Stoppers, and we are now putting some of these cold cases up on billboards throughout the state.
Sometimes a cold case can be a very old case.
Joe Ed went missing in the summer of '64 and has not been seen since that time.
This is Stanley Nelson, a reporter for the Concordia Sentinel, and for years he has followed unsolved local cases from the civil rights era, including the disappearance of a young man named Joseph Edwards, known as Joe Ed.
A group of Klansmen that became known as the Silver Dollar Group were actually being formed at that very time. The thought is that probably it was a relationship with possibly a white woman, and that was the reason that he was killed.
Stanley says there are no reports of any young missing black men in that area from that time, except for Joe Ed.
So why is Mary here? What's happened? What's the news in terms
Well,
of...
Mary is interested in solving any case she can, and she's the first person in 45 years that's made any effort in authority that we know of that's coming out and trying to find it.
Mannheim returned to Clayton, Louisiana to search for more remains near a place where a partial skull was recently discovered.
We're getting way ahead of ourselves, it sounds like, if we say, this is the story of Joe Edwards. We just don't know.
No, we have no idea who this partial skull belongs to.
But it's very clear that the community in Clayton has high hopes, at the very least, of finding out something of what happened.
Joe was a fun-loving guy. I mean, not rowdy. Just like to live life.
Robert Lee grew up with Joe Ed.
You know, growing up in this time, in this area, when they said they found his car on the side of the road with some blood in it,
You knew that was it.
we knew.
What would it mean to you to have this case solved?
It would mean a lot for all of us if this would be, you know, some type of answer would come to what happened to Joe Ed. And we would like to, if we could get his remains and give him a good Christian burial, it would mean a lot.
The target today, was to try to do another surface survey, which we're trying to do, but the terrain is such, the overgrown area here, it's not a good time. So we need to come back here when the weather is very cold, when all of this is dead. But,
For the Bone Lady, no case is too cold, no person too forgotten, no bone too old.
It is a very personal thing for you. It's not.
It is. It is. It is a very personal thing that drives me. It is. So it's not just the science. It's not just the figuring out the puzzle. It's justice. I like justice.
And as for that find by the side of the railroad, who that was, it's still a mystery, and she's still on it. I'm John Donvan for Nightline in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.